She found out about her daughter's wedding from a Facebook post.
The next day, she sold the house, erased her identity, and vanished. For 5 years, she built a ghost life on a forgotten Florida shore, believing her own child had replaced her, until the day a trembling voice in the quiet of a library said, "Mom," and confessed, "I cry with regret every single day. This is a story of the most profound betrayal, the quietest revenge, and the fragile, terrifying bridge back from a silence that was meant to last forever." The chime was innocuous, a soft digital ping that had punctuated Marianne's afternoons for years. It usually heralded a meme from an old college friend, a news article from her sister, or a picture of a misbehaving cat. That Tuesday, sipping lukewarm Earl Grey at the scrubbed pine table in her sun-dappled kitchen, she tapped the notification without looking. It was a flood of congratulations. "Stunning. Absolute perfection. Welcome to the family, sweetheart." Scrolling up, her heart a curious, still creature in her chest, Marianne found the source, and the world drained of sound, of color, of oxygen. There she was, Chloe, Chloe, not in the casual jeans and flannel she'd last seen her in 2 years ago, during a stilted coffee where they'd discussed the weather and the rising cost of rent. This was a vision in ivory satin, a gown with a delicate lace bodice and a skirt that cascaded like frozen cream. Her hair, the same wheat gold as her father's, was swept up in an intricate twist, dotted with tiny pearls. She was smiling, a radiant, unguarded smile that Marianne hadn't been the recipient of in nearly a decade. Her arm was linked through that of an older, beaming woman in cornflower blue. A man in a proud, slightly too tight tuxedo had his hand on her shoulder. The in-laws. The caption read, "The happiest day of my life. So grateful for my new family, the Porters." 10.14, 23, hashtag just married, hashtag femilize everything, hashtag Porter party of two. Marianne's thumb hovered over the screen. She zoomed in. She searched the blurred faces in the background for anyone she knew. For a cousin, a family friend, a ghost of an acknowledgement. There was none. It was a gallery of strangers celebrating her only child. The pain, when it came, wasn't a knife. It was an absence, a total systemic failure. As if the core reactor of her soul had simply shut down. She felt a profound, hollow cold. She didn't cry. She placed the phone face down on the table with the precision that felt surgical. The tea was ash in her mouth. The house, their house, suddenly felt like a museum of failed archaeology. Every corner whispered, "Here is where she took her first steps." Clutching your fingers. Here is the doorway where you marked your height each birthday. Pencil lines crawling upward. Here is the living room where you held her through heartbreaks and fevers. Here is the phone on which you had your last real conversation. The one that ended with a sigh and a dial tone.
She got up. She walked to the bay window that looked out onto the garden she had tended for 25 years. The rose bush she and Robert had planted when Chloe was born was a tangle of brown, winter-stripped canes. Robert, who had left for a conference and never come back, felled by a highway aneurysm when Chloe was 11. They had been a team, the two of them against the void, or so she believed. Now, it was just her, in a museum curated for an audience of one. The decision formed not as a thought, but as a fact. As immutable as the photograph now seared behind her eyelids. She would not cry. She would not call. She would not be the mother who begged for scraps from the wedding table. If her absence from Chloe's happiest day was a statement, then Marianne would finish the sentence. The next morning, she called a realtor. Sylvia was brisk, efficient, her perfume a cloud of citrus and ambition. "It's a seller's market," she chirped, clicking her pen. "We can list it as is, staged, and get multiple offers above asking in a week." "No staging," Marianne said, her voice surprisingly steady. "As is, quick, quiet sale. All cash, no contingencies. I want it done." Sylvia blinked, then shrugged. The scent of a hefty commission overriding her curiosity. "Your call, honey." I'll have the paperwork this afternoon. The purging began. Chloe's room, preserved like a shrine since her departure for college, was the first and most brutal. Marianne worked with a detached, methodical ruthlessness. Childhood drawings went into recycling, not storage. Trophies for participation in forgotten sports events were dusted and dropped into donation boxes. The stuffed elephant, Mr. Trunks, missing one glass eye, was held for a long, trembling moment before being placed gently atop a bag for the thrift store. It felt less like packing and more like an exorcism. She found the wedding binder under a stack of old yearbooks. It was a relic from Chloe's teenage years when they'd still been close. They'd pored over magazines together, Chloe pointing out ball gowns and rustic venues, Marianne secretly snipping pictures of elegant sheaths and garden parties. "You'll wear Nana's pearls," Marianne had said, and Chloe had nodded, resting her head on her mother's shoulder. That binder was a fossil of a future that had never existed. A shared dream now performed with a different cast. She threw it, unopened, into the black trash bag. Friends called. Her sister, Laura, was frantic. "Mari, what's going on? Sylvia told me you're selling. Where are you going? Have you talked to Chloe?" "I'm fine, Laura. I need a change. Did you see the picture?" Laura's voice dropped to a whisper. "I saw it. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. She must be. I don't know what she's thinking. Let me call her." "Don't." The word was final, glacial. "This is between Chloe and me, and it's already been decided." The closing was a sterile affair in a lawyer's office. Marianne signed her name on a dozen lines, relinquishing the deed to a young couple with intertwined fingers and hopeful eyes. "It's a beautiful house," the young woman gushed. "We can't wait to start our family there." Marianne managed a thin smile. She took the cashier's check, a shocking sum of money that felt like meaningless parchment. She bought a used, nondescript sedan with cash, packed it with 2 suitcases of clothes, her laptop, a box of photos from before Chloe was born, and her mother's porcelain teacup. She didn't leave a forwarding address. She drove south until the pine trees of Connecticut gave way to the marshes of the Carolinas, and kept going. She had no destination, only a direction. Away. She finally stopped in a small, faded coastal town in Florida, a place of pastel stucco, salt-bleached docks, and retirees moving at the speed of syrup. She rented a 1-bedroom apartment with a view of a parking lot, paid 6 months in advance with cash, and became invisible. Her new life was built on silence and routine. She woke at 6, drank coffee black, walked along the seawall, watching pelicans dive and shrimp boats jug out to the Gulf. She got a part-time, solitary job shelving books at the local library, a place of profound and comforting quiet. She spoke to no one beyond necessary pleasantries. She was polite, pleasant, and utterly closed. She was a ghost in a town of ghosts, and she found a strange peace in it. She created a new email address. She deleted her social media accounts. To the few who might look Laura, old friends, she had vanished. The only link was a P.O. box she checked monthly, where statements from the new investment account holding her house money arrived. For months, she felt nothing but the hollow chill. Then, one evening, shelving in the library's history section, she pulled out a heavy tome on local shipwrecks. A photograph fell from between the pages, a picture of a young couple, circa 1940, standing before a fishing boat, smiling bravely. Someone's lost memory, pressed and forgotten. A sudden, devastating wave of grief for all lost things, for Robert, for Chloe, for the mother she herself had been, crashed over her. She slid down between the stacks, the cold linoleum against her legs, and wept silent, heaving sobs into the musty pages of the book. It was the first time she had cried since seeing the photograph. The crying became a strange, sporadic release. She'd be fine for weeks. Then the scent of gardenias from a neighbor's yard, her wedding flower, or the sound of a child's laugh would undo her. She was no longer numb, but the pain was a raw, weather-beaten thing, a part of the landscape. She began to write, not letters to send, but words poured into a cheap notebook. Dear Chloe, today I saw a girl learning to ride a bike. Her father was running behind her, holding the seat. I remembered the scab on your knee from when you fell in our driveway. Dear Robert, the sky here at sunset is the color of a bruise. You'd hate the humidity, but you'd love the birds. It was a one-sided conversation with the dead and the gone. A way to untangle the knot in her chest. A year bled into 2. Marianne's hair grew longer, streaked with more silver. She adopted a one-eyed, battle-scarred tomcat from the library's lost and found, who she named Fitzgerald, after the novelist of Lost Glory. She started a small, defiantly lush container garden on her bleak balcony, fighting the salt air for every bloom. She was healing, in a fractured way. The wound was scarred over, but the limb was still missing. Meanwhile, in a stylish downtown loft 3 states north, Chloe Porter scrolled through her own feed. Her life was a curated exhibit of success, dinners at trendy restaurants, vacations in Tulum, promotions at her graphic design firm. Yet, her eyes were perpetually shadowed. Her husband, Ben, was kind, stable, from the good family that had so openly embraced her. His parents had filled a void with a generous, smothering love. The wedding had been their production, a seamless event where every potential emotional snag had been smoothed over. Are you sure you don't want to? Try to find her, Ben asked one night, holding her as she stared at the ceiling. She made her choice, Chloe would say, the mantra she'd repeated for years. She sold the house. She left. She doesn't want to be found, but the regret was a low-grade infection, always present. Her mother's absence was the conspicuous hole in the tapestry of her life. It was in the questions from new friends, "Oh, where are your parents from?" In the Mother's Day ads that made her stomach clench. In the quiet envy she felt watching Ben's mother fuss over him. The act of not inviting her had been born of a deep, old hurt, a lifetime of feeling second to her mother's grief for Robert, of clashing over every life choice, of a love that felt conditional on conformity. The wedding was to be her clean break, her declaration of independence into the arms of a better family. But the victory was ash. She had wanted to punish Marianne, to show her she didn't need her. She hadn't anticipated the permanent, deafening silence that followed. She'd assumed there would be a fight, tears, a dramatic confrontation. She had not anticipated quiet disappearance. Her mother had called her bluff in the most absolute way imaginable. The final straw was her pregnancy. Seeing the 2 pink lines, the wave of joy was immediately followed by a tidal wave of terror and longing. Who will tell me what to do? Who will tell me about my own birth? Who will be my mother now? The in-laws were thrilled, but they were not hers. This was a journey that screened for the presence of the one person who had known her from her first cell. One afternoon, drowning in nursery catalogs and unsolicited advice from her mother-in-law, Chloe broke. She went to the hall closet and pulled down an old cardboard box labeled "College." Buried under textbooks was a smaller shoebox. Inside were letters, dozens of them, in her mother's elegant script, sent during her freshman year. Letters she had mostly skimmed, too busy with her new freedom to really read. She sat on the floor and began to devour them. They weren't guilt trips or lectures. They were vignettes. The rose bush has a single, perfect bloom. I thought of you. I tried that tar recipe you love and burned the peanuts. The kitchen smells like a disaster zone. I found your old rollerblades. Remember how you used to terrorize the sidewalk? They were love letters, plain and simple. The love of noticing, of remembering, of a mother's mind perpetually tuned to the frequency of her child. She had missed it. She had been so focused on the ways her mother's love felt stifling. She had failed to see its vast, quiet constancy. The wedding, she realized with a sickening lurch, hadn't been a declaration of independence. It had been an act of supreme, unforgivable cruelty. She had not just excluded her mother. She had publicly replaced her, and then tagged it #family is everything. The search was harder than she'd imagined. Marianne had vanished with professional thoroughness. The house was owned by the cheerful young couple who knew nothing. Her cell was disconnected. Her email bounced. Laura was tight-lipped, protective. She wanted peace, Chloe. Maybe you should respect that. Please, Aunt Laura. I have to try. I'm going to have a baby. A long silence. Then, a sigh. All I have is a P.O. box in Florida. A town called Seagrove. She never answers, but she gets the statements. That's all I can give you. It was a thread, frayed and thin, but it was all she had. Ben, worried but supportive, offered to come. Chloe refused. This is something I have to do alone? The drive to Seagrove was an eternity of self-recrimination. She practiced speeches in the car, all of which sounded hollow and pathetic. I'm sorry felt ludicrously inadequate. What did you say to the parent you had erased from the most important day of your life? Seagrove was a shock. It was sleepy, shabby, nothing like the vibrant, manicured suburb she'd grown up in. It felt like a place people came to fade away. Her heart hammered as she asked at the post office, the diner, the gas station. Marianne, older woman, keeps to herself. She got shrugs. Finally, at the library, a teenage page nodded. Oh, you mean the quiet lady who works in the afternoons? She shelves the books. She's here today, I think. Chloe's knees went weak. She followed the boy's pointing finger to the nonfiction aisle. And there she was. Her mother was thinner, her posture less rigid. She was reaching to place a book on a high shelf, her face in profile, focused on the task. She wore simple capris and a linen shirt, her silver hair in a loose braid. She looked peaceful. It was the last thing Chloe expected, and it shattered her completely. She stood frozen, 10 feet away, a sob trapped in her throat. Marianne turned, sensing a presence. The book in her hands, a volume on coastal botany, fell to the carpet with a dull thud. Time stopped. The air between them thickened, charged with 5 years of silence. A wedding, a souled childhood, a lifetime of love and friction. Chloe saw the shock in her mother's eyes, then a shudder falling, a careful, practiced neutrality returning. Chloe. Her name was a statement, not a question. No warmth, no ice. Just an acknowledgement. Mom. The word was a ragged breath. Marianne bent, slowly, and picked up the book. She slotted it perfectly into its place on the shelf. The ordinary action in the face of the seismic was terrifying. How did you find me? Aunt Laura. The P.O. box. Chloe's voice was trembling. I had to see you. Marianne just looked at her, waiting. Her eyes, the same hazel as Chloe's, were deep wells of unspoken history. I'm so sorry. The tears came then, hot and unstoppable. What I did. It was horrible. It was the worst thing I've ever done. I was angry and stupid, and I wanted to hurt you, and I didn't understand. I didn't understand until it was too late. The words tumbled out in a messy, wet heap. I got your letters. I read them all. I saw the wedding binder when I went by the house. The new people let me look in the trash before pickup, and I saw it. Marianne flinched, almost imperceptibly, at the mention of the binder. Chloe took a step forward, her hands held out, pleading. I have no excuse. There is no excuse. I need you to know that I regret it. Every day. I cry with regret, Mom, every single day. The last sentence hung in the quiet library air. It was the confession from the prompt, given voice, given a tear-streaked face. Marianne's composure cracked. A single tear traced a path down her cheek, followed by another. But she didn't move. She was a statue weathering a storm. Why? Marianne's voice was a whisper, raw with 5 years of compressed pain. Just tell me why. Was it so terrible, being my daughter? No, Chloe cried, then lowered her voice to a desperate whisper. No, it was me. I felt like I was living in a shrine. To Dad, to the past. Every choice I made felt wrong to you. I felt like I couldn't breathe, like I could never be enough to make up for what you lost. And Ben's family. They were just easy. They wanted me, no questions, no history. It was a coward's way out. I traded a real, complicated love for an easy, simple one. And it's empty. She placed a hand on her still flat stomach. I'm going to have a baby. And I'm so scared. And I realized I have no one to ask, no one who really knows me. I erased the only person who ever could. The mention of a grandchild was the tectonic shift. Marianne's eyes widened, flicking to Chloe's stomach, then back to her face. The careful walls she'd built, brick by painful brick over 5 years, shuddered. This wasn't just about the past. It was about a future she was being offered a glimpse of, from a daughter who had once shut her out completely. Marianne took a long, slow breath. She looked past Chloe, out the library window to the parched palm trees rattling in the Gulf breeze. She looked at the life she had built here, a life of silence, of survival, of tending small, quiet things like books and plants and a one-eyed cat. Regret, Marianne said finally. The word, tasting strange, is a heavy house to live in. I sold mine. I moved out. Chloe's heart plunged. This was it. The door was closing forever. But Marianne continued, her gaze returning to her daughter's devastated face. You can't come back to a house that's gone. Chloe. That mother, the one waiting by the phone, the one with the wedding binder, she doesn't live there anymore. She took a step forward, not to embrace, but to bridge the physical chasm. This woman here, she shelves books. She kills succulents by overwatering them. She has a cat named Fitzgerald who hates everyone but her. A faint, almost ghost of a smile touched her lips. I don't know if I know how to be a grandmother, or even a mother again. That path is overgrown. It might not lead anywhere. She paused, letting the hard truth settle. But you found me. You said you're sorry. And you're carrying a child. She looked down, then back up, her eyes glistening. We can't go back. But there might. There might be a different path. A new one. We'd have to build it from scratch. And it would be slow. And it would be hard. And I can't promise it would look like anything you'd recognize. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't an embrace. It was a possibility. A single, fragile seedling offered on barren ground. Chloe nodded, unable to speak, her whole body trembling with the enormity of it. It was more than she deserved. It was a chance. Marianne finally closed the last foot between them. She didn't hug her. She simply reached out and took Chloe's hand. Her grip was firm, real, warm with life. It was the first touch in over 7 years. Come on, Marianne said softly, her voice thick. Let's go get a cup of terrible coffee. And you can tell me everything. As they walked out of the quiet library into the blinding Florida sun, hand in hesitant hand, the past was not erased. The photograph existed. The hurt existed. The lost years were a permanent chasm between the people they were and the people they had become. But across the chasm, 2 women, one a mother, one soon to be a mother, had thrown a single, fragile line. A thread of words, of regret, of a future not yet written. It was not a reunion. It was a first, trembling meeting. And for now, in the salt-tinged air of a town built on forgetting, it was enough to begin.